If you can turn to the Gospel of John, the 8th chapter. I saw my colleague at the Hamptons conference, and we were talking, and she told me that she was going to be in Raleigh. And I said, well, come on and check us out. I got to put this right because I can't mess this up now. There's one great school on the northeast of the state. One great Methodist school on the northeast. Now, southeast, there's another Methodist school, but the only reason I like this school, Duke, is because my wife goes there. When she leaves, I don't care too much about Duke. But Drew is the best seminary on the northeast side of the states. That's Drew Theological Seminary. So since I got some help, I'm just going to say, hey, Drew. Okay, let me make all of y'all feel good. All of the Shaw Divinity School grads say, hey, come on. There you go. All of the Duke seminarians say, hey, how you? Okay, now I'm equal opportunity. Yeah, I don't care for Duke no more than I care for Miami Heat. Did I miss the last game? San Antonio won, right? Huh? Look, somebody told me get on the Heat bus. You know what I told them? That bus is riding with one flat. It's about to get a second flat today. It's going to be down to two wheels. Okay, the Gospel of John, starting at chapter 8. I'm going to continue on in my series. This is the second part of my series. It's calling it the Right Now Jesus, as we investigate the I am sayings of Jesus. So the title for this sermon on this Sunday is Right Now He is the Light of the World. Right now He is the light of the world. Chapter 8, starting at verse 12. Actually, just verse 12. Again, therefore, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in the darkness, but shall have the light of life. Right now, He is the light of the world. Last week, like most of you, I was excited to hear about or to come to understand that Jesus said that He is the bread of life. What a marvelous Jesus to be the bread of life. But let's be honest. Every now and then I need more than bread. Matter of fact, if my God is only a one-dimensional God, we are in some bad shape. But thank God that the Gospel of John, that maverick of a gospel, is able to look back at Moses' burning bush. When that bush caught on fire and Moses heard from God, and then Moses said, well, who shall I tell them is sending me? And God spoke down from heaven and said, tell them I am. that God is so marvelous and God is so expansive and God is so deep that the only thing that God could tell him was, I am. And we should never get so caught up in a one-dimensional God, but realize that there's more to God than just what the last thing we saw. I mean, light is a wonderful thing, but he's more than the light of the world. Bread is an awesome thing, but he's more than the bread in the world. I mean, water is a wonderful thing, but he's more than a fountain. You can never confine God in the context of your last engagement with God. And let's not be confused. Some of us block God in or put God in a box and cover the box up based upon the last thing we heard from God. But I'm so glad and I'm so grateful that I can't keep God in a box. That as soon as I put him in a box, he shows me that he's a little bit more than the last thing he was. I mean, I thought and I knew that God was a healer, and I thought that's all that God was until I found out he's a heart regulator. And then I got caught up in the mere fact that he's a heart regulator, and I clung closely to my heart. But then I found out that God will meet me also in a courtroom. I can't get so caught up in God that I leave him all in one spot. God is too good for that. Yes, sir. If you met God at your job, surely you can meet God in your car. If you met God in the church, surely you can meet God in your bedroom. If you met God in your bedroom, surely you can meet God in your boardroom. Wherever the last place you met God is only the piece of where God is trying to take you to. And that's what we have when we see this text. We see this text in a context, and really to understand this text, you have to go to chapter 7. Because in chapter 7, God is doing something that he has never done before, because during this time, there was the Feast of the Booths. And in the Feast of the Booths, they are doing some things in the temple that represent who God was to Moses. They remember how God brought them out of Egypt and he was taking them through to Canaan. They remember all of these things. So now they are in the temple. And being in the temple, they began to do certain rituals. And one of the rituals they would do, they would pour the water from the pool of Siloam to remember how God's favor flowed. But then there's something else they would do. They would light the candelabra into the inner courtroom where the women would be at. And the light would be so bright, and then they would dance all around because they was remembering that God was the light and all that he had done. They were remembering that. Now look at Jesus as he's in the temple. Jesus is in the temple and he's watching them light the candelabra, singing and dancing and shouting because the light in the temple is fancy and the room is full of light. And then he looks and he tells them, but I am the light of the world. Here it is that the Jews was focused on what was taking place. I feel like preaching a little while. That the Jews was focusing on what was taking place in the temple. They were caught up in the rituals of the day by day. Let's light the candelabra in the way that we need to light the candelabra. Let's pour the water in the direction we need to pour the water. Let's do all of the things in remembrance of what God did for Moses. But Jesus is saying, but I am here. Let's never be confused that if you get so caught up in some things that you can forget that God is here. And you never want to be in such a position to get caught up in the day-to-day activities of life and forget that God is with you. You do know and you do understand that sometimes we can get caught off guard if we don't sway the right way we're supposed to sway. If we don't do the program in a certain order that it ought to be put in. If we don't pray the last way we prayed before. If we don't bow down the way we bowed down before. If we don't jump the way we jumped before, or collect what we collected before, or do what we did before, that if we don't do that, then it must not be the same. But I stopped by to let some of us know. Why do we care what takes place in God's temple as long as God is there? We don't need much, but we need God. I stopped by to let the choir know I don't need a choir, I just need God. I stopped by to let the musicians know I don't really need any musicians, I just need God. I really don't need any ushers, I just need God. For when God is present, nobody else makes a difference. You need not to worry about who's sitting beside you. Just know that God is above you and around you. You don't really need to know who's the last person you saw or who shook hands. You just need to know that God is holding you in the palm of his hand. And here is Jesus standing in the temple court, looking at them. These people who knew the law. They can describe who the Messiah was going to be. They understood all the great things that Moses did and all of the stuff that God did. And that was the problem, as we found out last week. They attached the greatness and what had took place with Moses. And now in the temple court, they are lighting the candle as if that's the only light in the world. And Jesus is looking at the temple and he looks and he says, I am the light of the world. Now, that gives us a suggestion that if he is the light of the world, then therefore the world must be slightly dark. If he is the light of the world, then that must mean that there must be some darkness in the world. And sometimes we can get so caught up in the darkness that is around us. The darkness of our sin, the darkness of our immorality, the darkness of our legalism, and the darkness of our classism, and the darkness of where we live at. We can get so caught up in that we forget about who blessed us from the first place. That's right. And here it is, these Jews was in the temple, lighting the candelabra, believing what Moses did, but what they forgot was they was not focusing on Jesus. That's right. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Have you ever thought about that? If he's the light of the world, then the world must be mighty dark. If he is the light of the world must be mighty dark. And let's be honest, this world is dark. Amen. I just read in the paper today that on the 1st of July, that they are about to stop unemployment payment for over 77,000 something North Carolinians. That's a dark world. Yes, sir. They're about to change the policies that takes place in the state of North Carolina. This is a dark world. Yes, it is. As many homeless people that we have and as rich as this country is, and we still don't put enough food on the table, this is a mighty dark world. It's a mighty dark world when even God's house that's supposed to possess the light does not shine. It is a dark world. Amen. It's a dark world when churches are swapping members. It's a dark world when the doors of the church are closed to certain people and open to other people. It's a dark world. Whenever these things takes place in the world, he said, I am the light of the world. I had to think about this. Why couldn't he just say he is the light? Not the light of the world, but just the light. Because then wherever Jesus would be at, there would be light. But Jesus understood that the light had to be brighter than that. So that's why he said, I am the light of the world. And I found this out coming back from Virginia. There was an overcast, and the rain was coming down hard. My windshield wiper was on fast. Could not see much. But all of a sudden, I saw behind the clouds that there was a ray of sunlight. And I realized no matter how dark it is in the world, above the clouds, there is a sunshine. And the sunshine will spread the clouds away. My grandmother would say the storms don't last always. But one day, the sun will come out. And that's what Jesus is saying right now, that I am the light of the world. And you can be so caught up in your legalism, and you can be so caught up in your perfection of who you think God was the last time you encountered God, that your heart becomes so darkened, and that your mind becomes so dark, and that your eyes become so dark. But he wants everybody to know, I am the light of the world. Now, watch what happens next. He says, not only am I the light of the world, but he who follows me shall not walk in the darkness. That not only must you acknowledge he is the light of the world, but then you must follow him. And he's playing on what took place with the children of Israel when they was going through the wilderness, because they realized that the light of fire was guiding them and ushering them into Canaan. But all did not follow the light. And those who did not fall or follow the light, they dropped dead in the desert. And do know, if you don't follow the light, that you are dark and dead, and you can drop dead right now. There's no need if you can't follow the light. So he says, he who follows me shall not walk in darkness. How many of us are following the light? How many of us are walking in the light? How many of us acknowledge that he is the light of the world? For he is the light of the Lord of the world right now. There's no pause in it. As we found out, he says, I am, which suggests that he's not past tense, and neither is he future tense. But ultimately what he's saying is, right now, I am the light of the world. So right now, if you're in some darkness, and right now, if you're in some depression, and right now, if you can't see your way, and right now, if you don't know which way you're going, and right now, if there's some obstacles in your life, and right now, if there's some hurt in your life, right now, you can look up into the sky and says, he is the light of the world. And not only is he the light of the world, he's the light of my heart. Says, he who follows me shall not walk in the darkness, but shall have the light of life. I just stopped by to let some of you know, if you want life, sure enough life, good life, gracious life, a loving life, a worthwhile life, a magnificent life, a wonderful life, a good life, a marvelous life. If you want that type of life, then what you need to do is follow the light that sits high and beams down low. You need to accept Jesus Christ as the light of the world. He's not the light for just the Democrats. He's not the light just for the Republicans. He's not just the light for the rich. He's not just the light for the poor. He's not just the light for the urban city. He's not just a light for the suburban city. He's not just a light for the country. He's not just a light for the Southeast. He's not just a light for the Mideast. He's not just a light for the Mid-Atlantic. He's not just the light of the Midwest. He's not just the light over the Atlantic Sea. He's not just the light over the Pacific Sea. He's not just the light for Duke University. He's not just the light for Drew University. He's not just the light for Shaw University. He's not just the light for North Carolina Central. Not just the light. I'm trying to go as far as I can go, but I'll run out of time. He's the light of the whole entire world because he sits on the throne. And because he sits on the throne, he can shine on the world. So keep doing what you're doing in the dark. But know the light is on its way. Keep trying to hide from your husband. Keep trying to hide from your wife. Keep trying to hide from the church. But I got news for you. There's a light. And that light is going to shine on the darkness of your time. That's the purpose of the light, to show about your sin, your darkness, your immorality, your cussing, your lying, your backstabbing. The light will show on it all because that's the purpose of the light, for he is the light of the world. I know you didn't want to hear that. And I know you think that when you put the sheets over your head, he can't see you. And I know when you think that you can close your door and he can't see you. I know you think when you on your phone and you're calling this person and that person that nobody else can hear you. I know when you're thinking that you're doing this and can't nobody see it. But I dropped by to let somebody know. When you put the sheets over your head, he's there. When you make the phone calls, he's on the line. When you do the closed doors and you're talking about everybody else, he's behind the closed doors. I just want you to know he is.
Yes, he is.
The light. The marvelous light. The great light. The magnificent light of the world. And you want to know when that light shines bright is when you accept you just a sinner saved by grace. When you accept you're wretched. When you accept you're lowly and you're dirty. When you accept that you have no type of sense in your mind. When you accept you can't make it, then his light will shine on you and make everything all right. I'm so glad that I told him I'm not worth much. I'm so glad that I told him that I don't have all my sense. I'm so glad that I told him that I'm wretched and low down. I'm so glad he let me do all that I did that I thought I was getting away with. I'm so glad that he never let the light stop shining on me. But I found a bright light, and that light shone in my heart. That light made me happy in the dark. That light brought me into the fullness of his grace and his mercy and his kindness. I'm so glad that Jesus is the light of the world. He is the light of the world. This little light of mine, I can't sing, but I don't care. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Come on, y'all, make me sound good. This little light of mine.
This little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Everywhere I go.
Everywhere I go.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Everywhere I go.
Everywhere I go.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
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 I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
All in my home. I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
All in my home.
All in my home.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Let it shine.
Let it shine.
Let it shine. Let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Oh, this little light.
This little light of mine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Oh, this little light
This
of mine.
little light of mine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Let it shine.
Let it shine.
Oh, let it shine. Let it shine.
Let it shine.
Oh, Jesus gave it to me.
Gave it to me.
I'm gonna let it
I'm
shine.
gonna let it shine.
Jesus gave it to me.
Jesus gave it to me.
I'm gonna let it
I'm
shine.
gonna let it shine.
Jesus gave it to
Jesus
me.
gave it to me.
I'm gonna let it
I'm gonna
shine.
let it shine.
Let it
Let
shine.
it shine.
Let it shine. Let it shine.
If you're tired of being in the dark, amen.
I'm gonna let it shine.
She's not the only one.
Jesus gave it to me.
If you're tired of being in the dark
I'm gonna let it shine.
and you just want to
Jesus
give up, don't give up.
gave it to me.
The light is shining right now.
I'm gonna let
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah, yeah.
shine.
Come on, my sister.
Let it shine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let it shine. Let
Is there
it
another?
shine.
They're not by themselves.